Welcome back to the Sportsball podcast for week 2 of the new year of our weekly sports talk here. So, couple big major topics that we're going to get through today. We'll obviously kick it off with the NFL and going through the weekend games of the divisional rounds that happened. We're obviously going to get Zach's input on a lot of the coaching changes that have since happened around that time as well. And, within the past, I think, day or so, we've had just a lot more dominoes falling in the NFL coaching front with that, especially the biggest news of them all, I think, with Jim Harbaugh leaving Michigan and then going to the Los Angeles Chargers now. And we'll get into that whole discussion as well. We'll talk about some relatively NCAA football news. Not so much of happening on the Nebraska front, but just kind of what, maybe the fallout for Michigan, what's going to happen with Michigan and the allegations of those going forward, and just some other NCAA football news that we'll hit as well. And then kind of the basketball realm, we'll hit on the NBA, update on our teams. I know that Zach and I's teams played this past week, and Nate has some input on, Cat's 60-plus point game and how the Wolves still managed to lose that game.
It's called Minnesota sports.
We'll definitely hit on some NCAA basketball news, both Nebraska side for sure. 2 games have been played since that, and they got a big matchup coming up this weekend as well. And then just some slight MLB Hall of Fame news that has happened this past week. Just some notable big names that have got inducted to the Hall of Fame this past week. One from Nate's Minnesota team as well. And we'll get into that. But starting off with the divisional round games that happened this past weekend. Just kind of the quick headlines that I had put out of the Ravens kind of cruising past the Texans in the second half. Then you had the 49ers that eked out Green Bay kind of on the last possession there. And then you get to the Sunday games where the Lions kind of had the command most of that game. Tampa kind of came back, but then a late interception sealed the game for the Lions there as they move on to their first conference championship in quite some time. I don't remember the exact year off that, but we'll get into that. And then I think the most anticipated game that at least I thought was we were all geared up for was the Sunday night game between the Chiefs and Bills, because as we found out later, the TV ratings that came out, it was the most watched divisional game ever in NFL history that eclipsed over 50 or 51 million viewers that tuned into that game. So huge stakes, especially with, a lot of talking points going into that game of the Chiefs and their, Patrick Mahomes' true first road game outside of the Super Bowl for the playoffs and everything like that. And just definitely a back and forth game. And, we can definitely talk about kind of how the future of the AFC kind of QB battles that are kind of emerging right before our eyes between Lamar and Mahomes and Josh Allen now. I know I heard a lot of comparisons talking about kind of like Mahomes and Allen will kind of be the new Brady Manning type matchup going forward. And, certainly excited if you're, just a true NFL fan and just wanted to see good match. Those teams are going to play a lot. Those quarterbacks are going to have a lot of fun matchups. And I don't think there's ever been a blowout game between Mahomes and Allen whenever they played. It's always come down to kind of to the fourth quarter or last possession where one team pulls ahead over the other type thing. But kind of with my first impression takes, I think the Ravens definitely, they got off to a slow start, but then kind of proved to why they are the number 1 seed in the AFC, definitely dominating the second half. And, Kansas City definitely has a tough task in front of them going to Baltimore. But, if there's any team that can seize that moment and kind of knock off the number 1 seed at their home stadium, it's definitely the Chiefs. And it's just their experience of getting to that step, getting to where they always seem to have been, six consecutive AFC championship appearances for Mahomes since he's entered the league. And that's just an outstanding stat to have. And, most quarterbacks are even lucky just to get 6 chances at that opportunity, let alone Mahomes and the Chiefs getting 6 in a row with that. And then I think obviously the other big storyline with that is just the Lions. And, I know Nate's obviously not very happy with trying to not cheer for the Lions, even though maybe he might want to a little bit. I don't think he will ever admit it, but I think deep down, very, very, very deep down, there might be a little sentiment that he'll want the Lions to win.
You should definitely cheer. Oh, come
It's
on,
against
man.
my personal ideals here. Just can't do it.
Right. And then
Standards.
Yeah, I'll pass it to one of you two, whoever wants to take the reign next. Just what you saw from the divisional games this weekend. I know I wouldn't say the most shocking one, but the one that I think the team that has to be the most concerned right now is probably the 49ers. Just because you don't know what Debo's status, if he's going to be healthy enough to play Sunday. And the Lions are pretty much, it's Dan Campbell. He's going to do everything and anything that he can to win a game, whether it's going on 4th downs, 2-point conversions, all that. If Brock Purdy played like he kind of did Sunday, I don't know how much of a chance that he'll have against the Lions. They got lucky that Jordan Love kind of made a mistake throwing into triple coverage at the end of that game, but
that's being nice about it.
Yeah. I know as much as I watched that replay, I'm like, I don't know kind of what he saw there, but I think right now the 49ers are probably the most vulnerable team right now, just in terms of who they have to go against. I know they get the Lions at home, but the Lions just always somehow just pull things out this entire season. And, we kind of saw that last season with them heading into this season, but yeah. One of you two, just your thoughts, and then we can kind of go into the coaching searches.
Yeah, it was, darn shame Packers got a heartbreaking loss. Really, really hated to see that. Maybe next year, guys.
Yeah, I'm sure you're upset about it.
Yep, my heart is breaking in two right now.
I can tell by the look on your face too. You look very upset.
Even the tone in your voice is just so sad right now.
So sad, too bad. Yeah. Oh well, guys, you gave it your best, I guess, and man, I guess we'll see you next year, or not. I do feel bad for the Bills, though. That missed field goal at the end is very reminiscent of another NFC team that likes to miss field goals in the playoffs. So that was unfortunate. It was a good installment. The Chiefs Bills was a pretty overall good game. I do feel for Bills fans too, because that I've seen the tweets where are coming back up that they, essentially gifted the Chiefs the 10th overall pick back when they drafted Mahomes, and that's got to be a tough pill to swallow. I mean, at the time you don't know that Mahomes is going to turn into Mahomes, but I mean, hindsight's kind of 2020 there. But that's just a rough stat to kind of keep coming back up, especially when Chiefs just kind of keep having your number in the playoffs and the postseason. But I like my Ravens Lions pick from last week is still holding strong. I'm still gonna stick to my guns on that. I think the Ravens. I mean, it all comes down to Lamar Jackson, just kind of how he plays. If he shows up, and because I mean their defense is solid. They've got a lot of guys on defense that can really hold up their end of the bargain. But it really just you kind of live and die by Lamar, and so far he's been putting up pretty good numbers. CJ Stroud has been fantastic, kind of late season into the playoffs, and the Ravens defense held him in check for the most part. I mean, especially that second half, he was struggling. I mean, only giving up 10 points to a team that I think they had 40 some points against the Browns week before.
Yes,
and the Browns aren't necessarily a pushover defense either. So I think the Ravens are probably the team to beat out of the 4 remaining, if I were a betting man.
Mhm.
But yeah, I think I agree with you, Andy, that the 49ers are going to have their work cut out for them. They're kind of the most vulnerable, with Debo kind of very questionable for whether he'll play or not on Sunday. And then Brock Purdy. I mean, it should be weather-wise. We're not looking at a big rainy event in the San Fran area, so it should be kind of nicer weather. But I don't know. The Lions kind of feel like that team of destiny to make it. As much as I don't love to see it, I think they're playing good ball. I mean, they're just winning games. They kind of remind me of Washington from college, where they just kind of win. It's not always pretty, but they just kind of eke them out. And I mean, Jared Goff has been there before. He's led a team to the Super Bowl, and so he's no stranger to it. And so I think that's kind of my matchup. Ravens Lions. I think they should be good games overall. Lions Niners and Chiefs Ravens. I think they potentially be really really good matchups. Especially that Chiefs Ravens game. I think it'll be interesting to see if Mahomes can work some magic against that Ravens defense, or if it's just kind of a shutout there. But
and I'll be interested to
Chiefs have been
see
there too. So
I'll be interested to see how the Chiefs defense kind of reacts to Lamar. I mean, Josh Allen still ran plenty a bit against the Chiefs. So now you're going up against a quarterback that runs twice as much as Josh Allen does, and does it, I think, better than Josh Allen. And definitely the Ravens offense is designed to have Lamar do read options and everything like that and scramble and everything. So, can the Chiefs do it again twice in a row against, good mobile quarterbacks, but definitely against probably the MVP, which I'm assuming Lamar's probably going to be the MVP this year. But, it's another tough task for the Chiefs, but, as much as I obviously hate saying this, it hurts my soul, but, you can't count out the Chiefs in anything they do. They've been here before. They've done this before. And if there's any team, like I said, that can knock the Ravens off, it's the Chiefs, because they've been here, they've done this, and they know what it takes to win these types of games and going forward. But yeah, it'll be a good matchup for sure. But Zach, what your thoughts about the games at all?
You guys covered a good chunk of it, but I think I'm going to go on the opposite of what Nate said and say, I think for probably the first time in my sports fan life, I was a fan of the Packers on was that Saturday, Sunday, whatever.
Sounds dirty.
Only because I did not want to see the 49ers keep going. I mean, they still have to beat the Lions, which I agree. I think at this point, my hopeful is the Ravens and the Lions. I mean, pretty much to what you guys had said already. There's not much else to add on to that. However, I did find it interesting in the Lions Tampa Bay game where they got down to the end. They had it was like 32 seconds left, and Tampa Bay had a timeout.
They didn't
and
use
they could have taken it, and then they didn't use it. And then Todd Bowles was just like, "Oh, the game was over at that point." So I was like, "What?" I mean,
possession game.
And it was talked about on
script writers didn't have Tampa Bay in the NFC Championship.
And it was kind of funny too, because the way that the Buccaneers had gotten to that point, like they had scored on like 2 or 3 plays not too far before that too. So it was like it wasn't impossible to think they could have done it, because I think they actually had 2 timeouts left or something. It was just weird to think like you guys had a chance to go and tie it up. And in a playoff game, like a bunch of people were speculating on like the internet that it was like, oh, maybe the Bucs just conceded and then they were letting the Lions go on. It's like, you don't do that in a playoff game. I assume. I'm not in the NFL, obviously, but I just I thought that was funny.
There's also the controversy of they went for 2 on their last touchdown instead of, because they were down by 14. They went for 2.
Oh yeah.
That was a odd analytics decision. I guess some AI that's smarter than me supported it. But
good job, ChatGPT. Twitch plays the NFL. Yeah, my favorite thing about the whole analytics thing that they've started adding is, and I remember texting this to you guys, but I still remember saying it. It was like, I have yet to see one that says, kick it. It's like fourth and 5 or below, go for it. And it's like, and it'll be like the first quarter with like 13 minutes left. It's like the game just started. It's like, you need to go for it in this situation. It's like, no, I don't think you do, but okay. Analytics says you should go for this. Like, okay. I had yet at that point really to see one that said kick, and then I think like a day later it was like kick in a 4th and 8 situation. No way. who thought that was going to be the case? Yeah, I think I agree though. It was kind of rough watching the Bills lose. I don't personally have a problem with the Chiefs per se, but it's like, all right, it's kind of, the Chiefs are now I think becoming like the Patriots were 6-7 years ago, where it's like, okay, we're kind of tired of seeing these guys even just in the playoffs. Like if they didn't make the playoffs this year, I don't think anybody would have been upset. We went out to eat the other night and I was telling my wife that I really wanted the Bills to win, not because I have a problem with the Chiefs, but just because I wanted to see the Bills finally beat the Chiefs. And some guy heard me say that as we're walking out of the restaurant. He goes, "So did I." I'm like, apparently this was just kind of the overall feeling that everybody had. But
right.
Yeah. I mean, now we're down to the road to the Super Bowl. So should be interesting to see what happens. I think, like you guys said, it's going to be some really good games this weekend to watch. I'm really excited about that. But outside of the Super Bowl, obviously we got to talk about the Pro Bowl too. That's coming up.
Yeah, get that sweet flag football going.
Yeah, something like that.
The good old Pro Bowl. Yeah, I don't think we're going to do much for the Pro Bowl coverage this year, or in a year.
I don't know if I've ever watched one in my entire life. Willingly, at least.
I think last year I was kind of like intrigued just because they had like a bunch of the different football games. Like some of the stuff's kind of fun to watch, but it feels so much more of like an off-season thing. Like it shouldn't even be it shouldn't even be the week before the Super Bowl. I feel like there should be something else there. I have no idea what, but the Pro Bowl is it's a weird thing. But transitioning from that though, I feel like the big topic that everybody really wants to discuss and really wants to know about is actually all the coaching changes, because there's been quite a lot on that front.
Yes, and like I had mentioned in the opening, the biggest one that came down yesterday was Jim Harbaugh to the Los Angeles Chargers. We like we discussed last week, we know that Harbaugh has always kind of flirted with the NFL the past couple of years and finally pulled the trigger yesterday. Again, how much of that is how much does he want to go to the NFL versus how much does he know about
what's he running away from?
What's he running away from at Michigan? What's going to come down from the NCAA in terms of what's going to happen with Michigan? But nonetheless, he's coming back to the NFL. He's obviously had success in San Francisco before he left San Francisco to go back to Michigan. So I feel like the Chargers are probably just the perfect. He's like the perfect fit for the type of team that the Chargers are in terms of just kind of the personality. He's going to fit so well in LA and just with the Chargers in general of what they do. As much as I don't like that, because obviously, my division plays the Chargers twice a year now. It's going to be super fun to see Sean Payton versus Jim Harbaugh twice a year, because I think, are two of probably the most petty coaches out there. And watching them probably talk and shake at midfield or anything like that is going to be a sight to behold, depending on how the game goes. They're either going to be like super
WWE ring at midfield after every game.
And I feel like Sean Payton's going to initiate all of it, because that's who Sean Payton is. But yeah, it's outside of that, some other ones that have come down within this past week and even today. Raheem Morris, the Falcons, finally picked up a coach he was the Rams defensive coordinator.
Surprisingly not Belichick.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think that might be more the headline, that it wasn't Bill Belichick.
And then that leaves the option of where's Belichick going to go, because I think it's now just Carolina and Washington that are left.
It's just Washington and Seattle. Carolina hired Tampa Bay as OC.
Oh, yeah. I probably should have read down further. That's on the list of things that I have not gotten to yet. Other ones there. Brian Callahan, if that name kind of sounds familiar, or at least the last name, he is the son of old Billy C of good old Nebraska. So
I didn't
Yeah.
actually know that. So, and I think we were
Oh.
talking about it. I didn't know that he was actually the son until after I looked it
yeah.
up. I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah. So Bill Callahan's son, Brian Callahan, is now set to be the head coach of the Tennessee Titans, taking over for Mike Rabel, and that's another topic. I don't know where Mike Rabel's going to go now. I mean, he still very well could get one of those last two teams, but if he doesn't, is he taking a year off of coaching and waiting? I still think he's a really good coach. It's just who's going to take a chance on him now. Outside of that, and then like Nate had mentioned, Dave Canales. I don't know how to say that name. Canales, head coach to the Panthers. He was Tampa Bay's offensive coordinator. And then some of Zach's key rooting interests now. I don't think it's been officially announced yet, but I do support this hire for Philly's defensive coordinator, Vic Fangio.
Absolutely.
He was not a good head coach for Denver, but when he was coaching defense and the defensive coordinator for Denver, Denver had one of the top defenses in the NFL. So Fangio is definitely 100% a great defensive coach hire. No matter where he is, with Miami, I think they just had a lot of injury issues late in the season that kind of deterred their defense a little bit, which is probably why it didn't work out for him in Miami, but definitely support that. And then the one that I guess I'm kind of iffy, just because Kellen Moore has always been iffy wherever he's been. But that is possibly another candidate for the offensive coordinator for Philly that might creep up. And that's really my opinions on that. I know Zach will have more because it's obviously his team. But with going back again, the big headline, Jim Harbaugh to the Chargers, I think is a great fit, as much as I don't like it because it's a team that my team has to play twice a year again, but those are going to be great matchups going forward. And again, it stems back to what is happening at Michigan. I think we'll talk a little bit more of the NCAA news. That Sharon Moore, I think is how you say his name. He probably has probably the best odds to take over the head coach at Michigan, because he was kind of the interim coach when Harbaugh was suspended, kind of those last 3 games of Michigan's season and everything. But I think, what's going to happen at Michigan? What's he running from? And what does Jim Harbaugh know that we don't know yet about what's going to happen to Michigan, which is probably why he jumped to the NFL. But nonetheless, I think he's going to be a good NFL coach. He's proven it before, does it wherever he goes. And maybe he'll finally turn, all that MVP talk about Justin Herbert into legit talk. Because Herbert is, I still think, a good QB. He just happened to be coached by Brandon Staley, which I still wish he was a coach somewhere. Because that's been a great running bit, is how is Brandon Staley going to lose football games? Because it always happens. It's just how. But I'll turn it to you guys, your coach, your head coaching, your thoughts on coaches and changes, and then Zach will give us his Philly intake on that.
I agree. I think Harbaugh to the Chargers is going to be a really good fit. It seems. I mean, he's proven to be a pretty good, quarterback whisperer, if you will. I mean, JJ McCarthy turned out pretty well. Had Kaepernick back in San Francisco and got them to the Super Bowl back then. So I think Herbert and Harbaugh could be a force to reckon with. It'll be interesting to see. Chargers they got a lot of playmakers. Keenan Allen's getting a little older, and Austin Eckler's getting up there too. But I mean, they've got some pieces around, and I mean, they've got some solid anchors on defense too that should help them in that realm. And I mean, the big thing is they just don't have Brandon Staley coaching them anymore, so that should automatically bump them up a few points at least. But I think it's a good fit. It'll be interesting to see how it works out. I think they're giving him a lot of money. I don't think they've released anything exact. I thought it was a high number, preliminarily at least.
I think it was like 12.5 million.
Yeah.
For like per year.
Yeah, which is
which is a lot.
A lot. I mean, big name. I mean, he's proven he can do a lot, but if it doesn't work out, that's a lot of money tied up.
That might get him a studio apartment out in LA.
Might.
Right here, rent out there is expensive.
He gets 2 cardboard boxes on the sidewalk. But I think between the rest of the head coaching hires, the one that interests me the most, I think, is Raheem Morris to the Falcons. Partly, again, because Belichick didn't get picked for that job, but also I know Raheem Morris has been a candidate for a couple cycles now. And I mean, the LA Rams defense isn't exactly a pushover. I mean, they've had Aaron Donald anchoring them for the most part, but I mean, they've had a lot of turnover on that defense, and every year they've been pretty solid. And so it'll be interesting to see how that.
And
Jalen Ramsey also came out and said that, like, basically congratulated him because he's like one of the. And the guy, I think Jalen Ramsey basically was like, Atlanta got one of, if not the best coach on the market. And it's like, damn. I mean, I get it. You gas your guys up, but like that's praise. That's praise.
Yeah. And so it'll be interesting to see. I mean, he's obviously defensive minded coach, so I'm sure he'll prop up that Falcons defense. It'll be interesting to see though what he does with the offense, if he actually uses Bijan Robinson and Kyle Pitts.
I was just going to say, if he does that, I think everybody in Atlanta will be happy regardless of what happens.
Just feed your guys. And and it'll be interesting too to see what direction they go with the quarterback too, because they're Desmond Ridder and I think Mariota was the backup, and
it was nobody good.
Yeah, that's
Mariota was in Philly.
It was Heineke. That's what it was from Washington.
Gross.
Yeah, but it'll be interesting to see how that offense hopefully evolves, because they have the potential. But yeah, I think Raheem Morris. I know he was a candidate for the Vikings back a couple of years when we were looking for head coach, and a lot of people have been just impressed with what he's done. So I think that's my main kind of interest, I guess, for the head coaching cycle. I'll go ahead and pass it over to Zach on his takes on head coaching and what he thinks for his coordinators going forward.
Well, I'll start with the head coach part of things, because I think the biggest key interest that I took outside of Harbaugh was Bill Belichick didn't get picked up by anyone. And I think now I don't know if this is true. I have nothing to back this up or anything, but my assumption is that he's up there in age, and a lot of places don't want to. I mean, the Falcons at one point seemed like the main landing spot for him. Like, he had 2 or 3 interviews. People were like, yeah, this is where he's going. And then all of a sudden he's not going there anymore. My thought is, he's getting up there in age. He probably isn't going to be coaching much more. Might be doing the Brady thing where he would go and do it for 3 or 4 more years and then call it a career. I don't think a lot of teams are going to want that. I think a lot of them are going to be trying, especially the ones that are on the market, that were on the market, I guess, not anymore. Yeah, I think was the really key thing for me was that has somebody been I maybe I missed it or forgot. Did somebody go to the Seahawks yet? Because I know Pete Carroll, so that one's still
Seattle
open.
and Washington are the 2 open.
Okay.
Positions, which that would be hilarious to see Bill Belichick having to work with Pete Carroll in the front office. I would pay good money to see that.
That would be hilarious. This is definitely much more of a personal reason, but like you said, Nate, I'm curious to see how Atlanta does with Raheem Morris. More so, I want to see who he hires as his offensive coordinator and how they go about that, because on my fantasy team, I have Kyle Pitts, who is probably going to be a really good player, but had the worst luck ever with his head coach the last couple of years. So I don't know. I was actually hoping that Kyle Pitts would go to the Eagles, and that was a chance that he might have, when he was drafted, but he didn't. So
I know Tyson would agree with you because he is the owner of Bijan. So I can attest to how infuriated he was with how much he did not get used this year.
And I understand a lot of it was probably because the quarterback woes, but like, come on, like, you've got 2 probably pretty premier players. You could probably lean on them a bit. Now that is what it is. But and then for the Eagles side of things, I love Well, so that's not even been officially announced yet, but everybody keeps
It's the rumor. Yeah.
the hot goss is that he's apparently officially like moving back to Philadelphia and all that. He was supposed to be the coordinator last year, and then by the time that they got around to it, he had already gone to Miami. So I guess basically it's all lining up for him to go there now. So it's at this point all but confirmed. So, but I like it. Both Jonathan Gannon and then Sean Desai, who was last year's coordinator for most of the year, are both like from the Fangio tree, if you will. So if that's the scheme that the front office wants to run and the head coach wants to run, why not go get the guy that invented the scheme? And I like that. I think it's going to be a good fit. Obviously, this is off season, so all the Kool-Aid is coming through. Kellen Moore is the only one in terms of the offensive coordinator that I've seen that has a whole lot of weight. There's been a couple others, but not nearly as much. I think those are just kind of rumors as like who could be the offensive coordinator. Personally, I don't have a problem with Kellen Moore. I don't think going to the Chargers specifically, I don't think the offense was always the problem. Some of the stuff he ran might have been, but I don't think necessarily his offensive scheming is the problem. He did really well for the most part at Dallas. That might be my only hang up is that he was at Dallas. So I don't know. I'm sure as a person that has made millions of dollars as a coach, probably doesn't really care about alliances in that way, but you never know.
Inside man.
Yeah, well, and who knows? Maybe he'll be like, "Oh, Philly's way better." I don't know, but yeah. With the offensive coordinator, we'll see. But in terms of Vic Fangio, I'm all on board with that. I think that's great. I don't really have anything else on the other head coaches by any means. Not that there's a problem with any of them. The thing that I've noticed, and this isn't a bad thing, is just that, I think we're finally starting to see, well, the Eagles had Matt Patricia, who then took over at the end of the year for defense, which was a decision, which was quite a decision. He's an example, and I don't know what it's like to be a coach, but I don't understand how he keeps essentially failing upwards. I mean, he's not head coach anymore anywhere, obviously, but like, I'm sure he'll get hired somewhere. I don't know why, but like, the names that we're talking about now are outside of, Jim Harbaugh and whatnot, but people like that are different. It's fresh blood essentially. And it might work. It might not, we don't know, but I think we're finally starting to see new eras of coaches, which to me is great. So I love that. And then, I guess a perfect little switcheroo that's basically all the NFL stuff, but with Jim Harbaugh leaving Michigan, it kind of opens up the door to, what are they going to do at Michigan? What's his name? Sharon?
Yeah, Sharon Moore.
Yeah,
Sharon Moore. Yeah, I think that's probably the biggest headline is just Michigan. I mean, you guys basically hit upon it. To me, though, the biggest thing that came out this last week before we recorded was the tight end for Miami getting granted his ninth year of eligibility. What is that?
So he was in the same draft class, or I guess recruiting class, I should say, as Jalen Hurts. And Jalen Hurts has been in the league for quite some time already. So they were both recruited at the same time. And one is, 4 years in the NFL now? And the other is playing his ninth year of college football.
In other words, he's old. He needs to get out of college.
Yeah.
And I think, obviously probably a lot of that is medical red shirts. You get the free COVID year eligibility as well. And I will be happy once we are finally out of the woods of the COVID eligibility shindig, because that's why we keep seeing these super seniors, these grad transfers that are in their 6th, 7th year playing whatever sport.
This is beyond super senior. This is This is senior discount senior. Like, come on, guy, dude, out of school.
2 4-year semesters plus a grad year, essentially.
Crazy.
It's basically like, if you went to med school without going to med school and still playing football.
He's got high hopes.
Yes.
I mean, the NCAA granted it, so
Yeah.
maybe
Which is wild.
there's something.
because
There is something that
they'll
I
grant a
would-
9th year of eligibility, but if someone wants to transfer close to home to play, I don't know.
Well,
was
and
the
they
big-
denied.
Bad for the sport.
They denied baby Tua's
Yeah.
waiver, didn't they?
Yeah.
Yep.
That's why I said he's going to the NFL.
Which makes sense. I think he's got a shot to do that. But like,
Right.
Mhm.
And then I think a lot of just other minor, transfers, coaching changes. Bill O'Brien now going to Ohio State. I think it's to be their OC, if I'm not mistaken, or some sort of I don't know.
Yeah,
Some sort of
I
analyst.
was talking with someone at work who's an Ohio State fan. I think the plan is to put him at quarterback coach because he was the guy that recruited, which I mean, another story, but that Julian Sane who's going to Ohio State.
Yes, who decommitted from Alabama after Saban, and then
Bill
was
O'Brien
now
recruited him to Alabama, so I think they're bringing him in to be quarterback coach for him.
so does it strike you
Nice in there.
guys then that Ohio State is on the natty or bus train with this?
Oh yeah,
Regardless of
Seems
what
like
we
they're
think
pumping
about
some nil
Bill
money
O'Brien.
out.
and
Yeah.
now granted, given everything that's happened with Michigan, with JJ McCarthy and Corum both going to the NFL, Harbaugh's leaving. I think now they're like realizing, okay, now we didn't get Michigan at their best, but now this is the time to kind of reverse the scale again and get back on track of being dominant over Michigan. So yeah, that's how I've taken like all these NIL moves, these coachings, going to Ohio State and everything is they're just they're throwing literally every single dollar that they have of NIL at these kids and saying, this is the time to go get Michigan now when they're down type thing.
Yeah.
But then that's at least outside of the sad news that Georgia's mascot did pass away this past week.
I had
Uga-
wondered how
was
old
it
he
Uga?
was.
I don't
think it's
know
the
what their
10th.
names. The 10th, I was
I
gonna
think
say
it
there's
is 10th.
definitely more than 5.
I don't know if it's pronounced Uga or like Uga
I
or
think it's
whatever,
Uga.
but
You
Uga?
well, all of the above.
Yeah.
Either way.
It's also if you've ever have leaned into Big Cat's bits about mascots that pass away, he always hammers the team the next time they play of the mascot that passed away because it's usually the mascot revenge game after somebody dies. So
Oh, that poor FCS team that's going to have to go up
yeah.
against Georgia in the
Georgia,
new
it's-
season is
that's
going to
be the
pummeled.
mascot revenge game out of the season.
It's going to be like 108 to 7 or something. It's like the worst score of a game you've ever seen.
Right. But then I think outside of that, the bit of Nebraska news centered is we got the announcement of the spring game and the time of the spring game. For this year, it's April 27th at 11 a.m. And I remember Treb briefly talking about it, that it's that early because I think both baseball and softball play that day, which I would assume those are probably afternoon or nighttime stuff. So which is probably why the spring game is early in the morning so that fans can go, to both of those events afterwards and not have all three going on at once. But nonetheless, that'll be, our first chance to see some resemblance of Dylan and probably Carter Nelson and, these highly touted guys that we're all bringing in. It's going to be like every other spring game is, we'll probably see them for a series or two and then we'll see the backups the rest of the way. But just it'll obviously just be a lot more of intriguing, outside of, last year's spring game with first year, get your first chance to look at Matt Rule. As you get your first chance to look at one of the top rated recruits in all of the nation at the helms for the next hopefully 4 years, but I'm gonna guess it's 3 at least. But
battle.
exciting.
Raiola and Kalen,
Daniel and Kalen,
Harvard.
and then
I mean, gotta throw Harvard in there. He's
right.
He's still there.
I still imagine they're probably gonna try to bring in some other portal QB, even if it's just for experience and depth in the QB room. Because right now you have 2 freshmen and then a guy that only played quarterback until last year type thing. at least more consistently. So I still imagine Nebraska is probably going to go try to get some sort of experienced depth in that room, just so that you have somebody there in case something does happen or anything like that. But yeah, it's going to be fun seeing Dylan and Daniel square off, even just the spring, but then all of summer and fall camp and everything like that. We all just obviously going to expect that Dylan is going to be the starter, and rightfully so, just for how much he's talked about. But yeah, it's good to see just that competition there, and we'll get our first chance to look at that when that does happen as well.
It's always nice to get that just that taste of Kool-Aid.
Yes, just some nice spring Kool-Aid just to get us over the dead period of the summer that will happen.
You just know as soon as Dylan completes a pass, whether it's to Carter, just to anybody, or like runs for 2 yards,
to Carter Nelson
anything
for like a touchdown.
Right.
The natty
I'm sure that the spring game will probably sell out, and then the entire stadium will go absolutely berserk. Right. So.
But it was just like, I know last year the first play was the fullback dive in honor of Frank Solich, but I mean, it's the same thing. It's like, that's Nebraska wants to see that type of I formation, either option or fullback dive again, and just have that back in Nebraska football. And, it's going to be the same reaction as people are going to get up and cheer for like a 2-yard, fullback run. But it's the fact that, you saw it again. It's what Rule has preached, that he wants to get the running game back in Nebraska and what it has been, what made it itself in the 90s and all of that. But yeah, I think outside of that, unless you guys have any more NCAA news that we want to talk about.
Not really news, just a thought. Yeah. But yeah, sorry, Nate. This is just before I forget it. But something that, going back to the Michigan thing, that I just remembered was, I'm sure this is more of a college thing, not necessarily just a Michigan thing. But in this case, it's important because Michigan has basically come out and said, they require 7 days to essentially like open up the job opening and then hire somebody. So it's likely that Sharon Moore is going to get it, but they have to wait 7 days. Now, what I don't know is if until a new coach is announced, I don't know when that 30-day window opens, but I would assume it's when Harbaugh said, "Hey, I'm going to LA." Like, right. I would assume that's when that starts. So, if that happens and they have 7 days to fill that, that's basically a week, a whole week that they can't really do anything. Although I'm sure they're doing stuff in the background. But
I would love to get Ernest Hausman back. I mean, that's his freshman year was like, all of us have the same thought of, man, if you keep this kid, he's going to be a stud. And, by junior, sophomore, junior year, just being a dominant linebacker. And hopefully, I mean, I don't ever want to, put ill will on a kid, but hopefully he just sees that Tony White's defense was no joke last year, and he wants to come back and be a part of that dominant defense and run that linebacker core. Love to have, I didn't follow how much he actually played at Michigan last year. But, he probably got great coaching experience up there, got to be a part of a national winning team. And
I'd say wouldn't hurt to have someone who won a natty just have that experience in the group,
Right. Yeah. Hopefully he wants to come back and be a part of the more dominant Tony White defense in year 2.
God, I hope so. Could you imagine if we get more dominant?
I'll give him a raise.
I'm here for it. Now it's your turn, Nate. Sorry.
Yeah,
I just got that out.
Kind of building on to the hype of the spring game, kind of the newcomers. I watched the Polynesian Bowl, or part of the Polynesian Bowl.
I think it was probably you and the media members that had to cover it, and then I was probably about it of who actually cared to watch it.
I watched some highlights on Twitter.
Admittedly, there wasn't a whole lot else sports-wise going on. I'm like, Polynesian Bowl. Really? Cardinals were playing in that. We'll check it out. But
right.
It was a bit of a rough kind of first half for Raiola, but he kind of found his footing in the second half and had a couple touchdowns and led him to the victory. Had a couple kind of fun plays. Carter Nelson. Carter Nelson looked really good. I know I've seen a lot of people are like, we're not sure if 8-man's gonna transition to 1-man Division I football, but he looked comfortable in it. He's just really, really good athlete. And
I was gonna say, I think it can be agreed upon whether it's 8-man, 11-man, whatever football you play. If you're a good athlete in your sport, you're gonna that's probably gonna translate. You might not have exactly the same skill set as everybody else coming in, but I think it'll be fine.
Yeah, I'm excited to see the Fedoni, Carter Nelson tight end stack next year at least, and it looked good. It looked good. That's all
I remember seeing a specific highlight where it was Raiola to Carter for I don't know, it was a pretty decently long pass. The worst part was the camera angle was not very clear.
Yeah.
So I was sitting there watching on my phone. I'm like, what is going on? Oh, there it is. It took me a solid 5 or 6 times watching it. But.
Right.
Yeah. And the other weird thing was that Mike Zimmer was the coach for the team that Raiola and Nelson were on. I was like, oh, this is weird Vikings flashbacks, but
why?
But yeah, that was just kind of my other 2 cents on college football stuff. So
well, let's go to the Orange Ball then.
A lot happened on Monday in terms of NBA news. Whether you were focused on Zach and I's Bulls Suns matchup, or you were focused on everybody else that decided let's go for scoring records on Monday.
Yeah.
So I found out very quickly why Kevin Durant is still very, very, very good at basketball.
You love to see it. I love to see it.
I don't love to see it, considering the Bulls had a 23-point lead in that game and lost. So that tells you about all you need to know about how the Bulls season is going so far. But yeah, again, figured out why Kevin Durant is still very good at basketball. He had, I think, 10 points at half and then finished with 43. So he had what the kids say is a good second half. Is what I would call that.
Yep. The kids are saying
yes,
that.
Just the kids are saying that. Nobody else. And then while that's going on, you get Joel Embiid, who dropped 70 for the 76ers on Monday. You had Cat for the Timberwolves, who dropped 62 in a, what is that, a 128 to 125 loss to...
Yep. The Charlotte Hornets.
To the Charlotte Hornets, who were 9-31 at that point on Monday.
Who then last night lost to the Pistons, actually. So it's going great in Minnesota.
Who lost to arguably the worst NBA team in the league right now.
Yeah. But Cat had 44 points in the first half, which I believe is, I don't know if it's an NBA record, but it was close to most points in the first half ever.
Imagine being that on fire and
franchise record for most points in a game, and then
I can't.
I looked at the box score. There were 2 other players in double digits scoring, and that was it. Yeah.
Ouch.
I'm sure, Nate, you've seen it. If you haven't seen the Charlotte Hornets announcers' reaction to just Cat threes all night long, you would have thought they were, announcing for the Timberwolves. They were just so hyped. They were just like, oh yeah, he did it again.
I mean, when you get to a certain point like that, though, if somebody's just that on fire, regardless of who you're for, it's like this is something that you don't see very often. You can't not be hype about it, especially in basketball.
Right. And so, a lot happened on Monday. A lot of not good things for me personally, but it's fine. It's whatever. Some good things for other players and other teams. Nate's good for his player, not good for his team, and then everything worked out for Zach. So I guess somebody had to win it all, right?
That's all right, because then the Suns followed that up and they beat one of their rivals in the Mavericks. I think that was yesterday. They did them pretty good there. I was like, oh, okay. That's good.
The Suns are hot right now, is what
they started. They started very slow. God, I just now caught that. They started really slow, but they've definitely caught fire. They've definitely caught fire the last few weeks. Dropped a couple here and there. It's gonna that's kind of that was gonna be my overarching point though too. It sucks that Nate's team lost to the Hornets, but I mean, that happens. I mean,
we bounced back in a rough game against the Wizards last night.
I mean, go back to the
Unfortunately-
NFL too. The Panthers won a couple games too, and nobody thought they were going to at a certain point. So
Mhm.
Unfortunately, we did drop out of our 65-day reign of number one in the West. The OKC Thunder have taken the top spot.
where'd they come from?
That exactly. When I texted, whatever day I texted you both, I'm like, when did the Thunder become 27 and something? I thought they were bad.
I thought they were middle of the road.
Gilgeous-Alexander is a baller, and Chet Holmgren has surprised me as well.
Good. And they're all doing it without Josh Giddey.
They're doing it with Josh Giddey, but they should.
Oh, he's still allowed to play? I thought he wasn't
Yeah.
playing. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, well, the NBA is like the NFL then.
Yeah.
And then I think the bigger, outside of the Tristan Thompson news, which extremely funny.
I just love I know I typed this, but I still think it was hilarious because I typed this at like 8 a.m. I just said that Tristan Thompson was suspended for 25 games because of drugs.
That's all you need to know.
I mean, that's what happened. Like,
Drugs, man.
nice.
But
That's
then
I thought that was going to be the biggest headline, and then what I assume you're going to say next,
absolutely,
is what was the biggest headline. I was like, how did this one happen?
If most NBA teams were 30-13 right now, would you say we should get rid of our head coach? Right? That seems like a good idea to do mid-season. Is we're one of the top teams in the East. We should get rid of our coach, right?
Yep.
Most logical coaches, like the Celtics, probably wouldn't do that. Now, if you're a fan of the Milwaukee Bucks, on the other hand, your ownership might say, like, yeah, the team hates this guy. Let's get him out. And
number 2 in the East, and they're tied for like the second best record in the NBA.
And then you just got Damian Lillard in the offseason to help your team, and then you're like, no, we don't need this head coach guy anymore.
Well, that thing is like, what I've heard is they're upset that their defense hasn't been good. But you traded away Jrue Holiday, who's probably their top defender, for Damian Lillard, who doesn't play defense. No offense to the guy. He great player, great scorer, but his defense isn't quite Jrue Holiday. And to have that be your gripe about why you need to fire your coach is kind of funny. But
not only is it that they got rid of their head coach,
it's
who
they
they followed it up with. Like, what are we doing?
Astonishing news, I think, outside of the firing.
Freaking Doc Rivers. Like, what?
He gets a job, whatever, no matter what he does.
You want to talk about a guy that's failed upwards?
Yeah, it's Doc Rivers. Like Zach said, he'll fail upwards. He'll get fired, sit around for a little bit, and then whatever team needs to coach, like, he might do it this time. He still has good experience. We'll get Doc Rivers on our team.
I don't think, and I mean, I don't know how to coach anything. I fully admit that, but I can't imagine that because he doesn't sit around long. That's the other thing, is like, he didn't coach, but then all of a sudden it's like, here he is again. It's like, what? I don't get it. I don't get it. He might be a great players coach. I'm sure he is. I've seen players seem to love him wherever he goes. Kind of. But like,
some mixed reviews there.
Yeah, I was gonna say, but that's the thing, is like, what's the draw?
And I guess to add on to the NBA news, the All-Stars just got announced. The starters for the All-Stars just dropped. So for your East, your 5 starters right now, they're probably still deciding the reserves as we speak. But at least for your starters for the East will be Giannis. Obviously, no surprise. I guess none of these are really surprises, I guess, to me. But then you have Joel Embiid, again, no surprise. Damian Lillard, I guess, kind of a surprise, but really no surprise at the same time. You have Jason Tatum, not a surprise. And then Tyrese Halliburton, which I think is deserved.
Yeah,
for sure. And then on the West, you have, I guess, you guys can probably guess who the captain of the West is. If his name
is it let me guess.
If his name rhymes with Jabron Lames,
DeAndre Ayton.
Yeah. Oh,
I doubt it.
Not the West team anymore.
He's on the Trailblazers. Yeah.
Okay, so West team. But yeah, your captain of the West team, LeBron, which I think they just said passes Kareem's all-time all-star selection now. So he now, I think, is the most all-star voted player at 20 times, I believe is what they said, which, yeah, like I said, passes Kareem, who kind of was a good basketball player, believe it or not, you know? Some might say one of the better ones.
All right at the Sportsball in his time.
Yeah, just all right. And then you have Luka, no surprise. KD, no surprise. Shai, Gilgeous-Alexander, again, no surprise. And then the Joker, no surprise either. So those are your starters for the NBA All-Star team, if you cared. But I don't think any of those are really surprises at the same time either. We'll just kind of see who gets the reserve roles, and I think that's the more interesting. I like seeing who the reserves are because that kind of then tells you like who are outside of like your top household names, who does the league think are the better players right now. And
your up-and-comers.
Yeah, you're up and comers, and we'll see, who gets selected with that whenever that comes out. But I think unless you have any other NBA news from either one of you,
nothing huge other than Wizards. Other than the Wizards promoting Brian Keefe to interim head coach.
Yep, Chief Keefe.
No.
Oh well, I guess Heat got Terry Rozier. Kyle Lowry. Rozier. Yeah. I'm not good with names. And then the other one is just in trade news. It looks, I don't know if this has much weight to it. This was just on ESPN, but it sounds like the Lakers are trying to get
DeJounte.
I was gonna say
DeJounte.
That sounds like a Nate note, so he probably knows how to say it.
DeJounte Murray from the Hawks. That looks like a cooking ingredient.
I will agree with you on that one.
Or like a method of cooking, like sous vide is a thing. Like that's what that reminds me of.
That's how you say that.
You DeJounted. All right. Well, on the other side of Orange Ball, what's
got your NCAA news? So a lot of I'll kind of save the Nebraska specifics for after we get done talking about the overall thing, because that one I think we can talk a little bit more in depth about. But you have some big upsets kind of over the past week. I know Kentucky lost. I don't remember who they lost to, but I know they lost. They were number 6. Yeah, they lost to South Carolina. With that, I think who else lost? Northwestern, which also very much impacts Nebraska in terms of just kind of a quad resume booster. This might have been last night. Northwestern knocks off number 11, I think, Illinois at the time, or whatever rank Illinois was in overtime. Which I mean, you got to feel really good about as a Nebraska fan, just because over the past week you beat Northwestern at home, and then Northwestern goes on the road and knocks off a ranked team. At the same time, I think it was on the road.
I think it was at Northwestern.
Okay, never mind. Yeah. Either way, Northwestern gets another ranked win.
Andy, nobody wins on the road in the Big Ten.
I'm sorry, nobody wins on the road in the Big Ten. Clearly, because they lost. But yeah, I mean, Northwestern knocked off Purdue and Illinois, and Nebraska's already beaten Northwestern once. I know Nebraska has to go play Northwestern again here in a little bit, but still really, really good for just a resume booster for Nebraska. If Northwestern keeps on this track, that win eventually probably gets moved up to a quad 1, which just gives Nebraska another quad 1 win. But you're hoping that Northwestern kind of holds on to that, and they're probably saying the same thing with us, is they want us to keep winning, so then that quad 2 loss kind of looks more like a quad 1 loss in the end at the same time. But I think that's a really big just for Nebraska in terms of trying to build their resume as well. Wisconsin, Minnesota gave them a little bit of scare, but I think Wisconsin pulled one off in the barn up in Minnesota. They're probably one of the more consistent Big Ten road teams right now. And Wisconsin's really good. I mean, I know they beat Nebraska, but at the same time, Nebraska still scored like 70 plus in that Wisconsin game, and Wisconsin just shot the ball better.
Wisconsin could not miss in that game.
No, it's one of those games. It's like I think they said one of those stats is like the guy one of their tall men who was like only taking 5 3-pointers all year had made like 2 that game. So it was just one of those games where like everybody that wasn't making shots historically was making shots against us, which kind of goes on track too. But
That's straight up the
Edward.
worst thing about basketball, though, is like
Mhm.
there are
Yeah.
just some games where it's like, and you know, you can sit there and be like, Nebraska did not play bad against Wisconsin. They
Right.
they made some pretty questionable decisions
yeah.
in certain parts, but like they didn't play bad.
Mhm.
Wisconsin they could have shot a half court shot and they would have nailed it. It's just like,
Mhm.
what is going on?
Oh,
The
yeah.
likelihood of them making it was higher than it wasn't. It's like that's crazy.
Mhm.
That's crazy to me. Some games
And-
are just lost that way.
That's funny just how basketball is at the same
Mhm.
time. You know, it definitely applies to Nebraska too. I mean, if you don't, especially you can apply that to the last 2 games is, you know, if ranked Mask isn't on against Ohio State or if Casey and CJ Wilster aren't on against Northwestern, you know, those games turn out completely differently than they did. So that's true with every Nebraska game. And, you know, it's held true against Rutgers and Iowa is, you know, if Jawan Gary doesn't go down against Rutgers is what does that game turn out? Do Nebraska still find a way to hold on? Did they not get out rebounded as badly as they did? You know, that probably still happened, but yeah, with that, I think before we really dive into Nebraska or some kind of Creighton notes, if you two had any other thoughts just on the general NCAA basketball.
Parity in the NCAA is alive and well.
Mm-hmm.
I think
It's-
North Carolina looks really good. I know I'm like part North Carolina fan, but they look as of late they look pretty solid, and their only losses are to I think UConn, Kentucky, and someone else. But like
mm-hmm.
they're hitting their stride, and they've got a lot of guys returning, so they could be an interesting team in the tournament. Obviously,
Right.
UConn, Purdue are at 1 and 2, but Carolina's at 3 in there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just looking
Making
at
a
this
case for
top
themselves.
25 is so interesting to me because I'm so like, and am still working on getting into like college basketball more. So like I'm just going off of like the overarching umbrella idea of college basketball from the past for me. But like to see that Duke is number 12 when previously they were always like top 5. And I mean, I understand, you know, Coach K has been gone for a while now, but like still just like Duke was always one of those names where it's like, man, I always remember them being really good. And that by no means is 12 bad, but like not 12. I was, you know, top 10 at least. And it's just crazy to see some of these other teams in here that are, I mean, heck, Nebraska beat Purdue and Purdue's they were the number 1 team, but they're now the number 2 team. Like still not a bad thing.
UConn
Now,
still looks really good too, despite losing Sadogo and everybody.
Yep.
If Nebraska could just start winning some road games, which we've already kind of touched on, is impossible to do in the Big Ten, obviously.
Yeah.
But
we'll just kind of jump right into that. More Nebraska specific, but yeah, this upcoming weekend they take on Maryland at Maryland. You know, just another. Maryland's probably a quad 2 at the moment, if not very close to a quad 3. But you know, they just picked up a win, I think, against Iowa. So that's you know, big for their resume. Just kind of getting back. But Maryland's 12-8. And you know, if you just basically go off record wise, you're like, oh, Nebraska probably should win this game. Nonetheless, it's still Nebraska ball. There's still plenty of growing kits to go around because it happens every year. But yeah, I think this is the time to try to get that first true Big Ten road win. You know, they already have a road win from Kansas State earlier this year, but they don't have a conference road win yet. Because you know, after Maryland, you know, you have really 3 tough games of Wisconsin, Illinois, and Northwestern all right back in a row. So trying to keep that momentum from the past 2 games and beating Maryland, taking into 2 ranked teams, and Northwestern might be ranked if they keep winning by the time we play them again too. So definitely huge task in front of Nebraska going on the road this weekend. But you know, the past 2 games were at home against Northwestern. They edged that one out 75-69. And then against Ohio State, which 83-69, which was the ranked mass game, as we will come to know for sure. What was great about that Ohio State game is afterwards they were interviewing ranked mask, and they were like, you know, at first, when did you think that all those threes were going to start falling down? And he goes, probably when I hit that sidestep 3, it swished it. You know, the entire basket just kind of turned into a giant hole. because I mean, you don't typically think your center is going to go 6 from 8 from 3 every single game, and that's what Rank Mass did. He was certainly, top 10 all time of most points scored in Nebraska game history. I know the fans wanted to getting on the ball more, try to see if he can get close to that record of breaking. I think the record is 42 for most
Teddy
points.
Allen.
For most points scored in a Nebraska game. So, nonetheless, it's good to see him kind of have the game that he did, because I thought the past couple of games he was kind of average, not what we kind of saw from him at the beginning of the season. Kind of taken a little time off, but then certainly came out, did what he did. I think he's probably the bloodiest guy on the court every single game. There's always a stoppage every single game because he's bleeding from some new place, just because for how much he loves taking hits. He loves just being physical. And, if you see him on TV, like he's got a giant shoulder scratch. His forearms are just so scabbed and cut and bruised and everything. Just from being a physical center in the Big Ten, which is what you need to be.
Yep.
But nonetheless, I think they were two really good, important wins for Nebraska. Nebraska certainly followed up their turnover woes with a very much carefree turnover game against Ohio State. I think they finished with 17 against Northwestern and then came back with only 6 turnovers against Ohio State this time around. So I think it was a really good bounce back from taking care of the ball at that point. And I think that's the biggest thing I've seen from this Nebraska team is it's really a collective team effort. Is you're going to have your guys that are on point every single game, whether it's Casey taking over, CJ Wilcher, or Rank Mass taking over. You're always probably going to have one guy that is going to be the star of the game. But I think Nebraska now has a much more depth in terms of no matter who Fred sends out on the court, it's not like, oh, I'm taking my starters off the court, we're going to go on, give up a 20-0 run type thing. It's Fred can kind of plug in anybody off his bench, and you still have the good Nebraska team that is out there that is playing good physical defense. That you don't have to worry about, oh, we need to give Casey a 2-minute rest because we need him back out there on the offense. And Casey only finished with 5 against Ohio State, and Nebraska still kind of blew them out in the second half without much production from him. So I think that's very reassuring that we all kind of thought this was going to be Casey's team starting the season, and we've kind of figured out that it's going to be whoever's the hot hand that night, but they still play really good team basketball, which is something that we haven't seen under Fred, certainly. But just having a really complete roster for this year, I think, has made me feel a little bit more at ease, but I'm still kind of on edge because, it's Nebraska basketball. It happens every single year. But yeah, I'll kick it to one of you guys. Just your thoughts on the past couple of games and just what we've seen so far from the season.
Yeah, I think you touched on the really big thing is they're playing team ball for the most part, and it's not going to be just one person that's racking up the points every night. It could be Casey one night, could be Rank Mass the next night, Bryce Williams or Jawan Gary another night, and there, like you said, there's depth. Josiah Alec can come off the bench. CJ Wilch has been just amazing sixth man.
Mm-hmm.
Sam Hoiberg is putting in just great defensive minutes, and they're not really playing as much hero ball as we've seen kind of in past years. And I mean, they've had to, or you have your 3-4 guys, and then the rest is kind of a little iffy on the back end. So
yeah, it's not nice like you're trying to rely on Teron Petaway or Bryce McGowan's or any of those single guys to kind of lead you towards the end of the season. It's whoever has the hot hand, you feed them. But at the same time, you can get that from any of those guys. It's just who is it going to be on a certain night?
Yeah, and so I don't know. They're fun to watch. Yeah, they got to clean up, the road stuff. But when they're at home and they're on, they look like a really good team, and they look like they can make a run. Just gotta keep making it through kind of the grind of the season. Like you said, we got Wisconsin, Illinois, Northwestern all in a row coming up early February. The schedule gets a lot easier after that. I think play Michigan twice, Penn State, a lot of kind of the bottom half of the Big Ten to finish out the season. But
it's important if you want those high quality quad 1 wins for the resume.
Keep stacking those. Yep. And the one thing I did see that was different from whatever was it 2 years ago when we had like the 20 wins where we were left out of the tournament was that we already have like 6 quad 1 wins or quad 1, quad 2 wins this season.
Right.
And so our resume is a lot better already. So I mean, definitely don't want to ease up on anything, but there's at least a good solid path forward for, you know, at least making the tournament. And I think latest bracketology, Lenardi has a 9 seed going up against, I believe, Seton Hall. So I mean,
which would be a really fun matchup if you had watched Creighton and Seton Hall this past weekend. That went into triple overtime.
Yeah, and I think the Seton Hall's coach is that Shaheen Holloway, who was with St. Peter's when they knocked off Purdue. So that'd be an interesting matchup. I saw that if we were to win that game, which would a very, very big if, given our NCAA tournament track record, we would unfortunately match up against Carolina, assuming they would beat the 16 seed they play, and that would be
we've already beat a number 1 team. It's one more.
No, might as well, right?
Might as well make it 2 in a season.
Big oof.
He stays keeping receipts, I guess. But yeah, you just got to finish out the season. You know, I mean, everyone said it. We got to keep winning at home. If you can pull, you know, a couple road wins against some of those lesser teams like the Michigans, Indianas down the stretch. You don't need to win all of them necessarily, but just grab a couple. Maryland this weekend would be a really, really good win for them too. You know, get another kind of top tier quad win. And then, yeah, that rematch against Wisconsin at PBA on February 1st, I can have circled them. I'm interested to see if we kind of come out for a revenge game or if we kind of go into our shell for that game. Right. That's might set the tone for kind of how the rest of the season goes. But that's kind of my thoughts on where Nebraska ball's at right now. I don't know if you have any additional thoughts, Zach, or
not too much. Really, the only one that comes to my mind is, and this is more future talk, really, but I think at this point, Fred has earned himself. I don't even know what's left on his contract at any point, but at some point, you know, contract extensions or contract talks have to come up. And I think this year has proven that he's got a framework that works for a team, and he's got a good chunk of people that are coming in and are playing really well for him. I think he's earned himself more years. I don't want to get ahead of myself and say he's made Nebraska a contender by any means, but I'm certainly not going to say that we're bottom of the barrel too much like we used to be. The thing that I've noticed though, and again, I have to keep leaning on this because if anybody wants to take my quotes out of context, it's I have no idea. Really, I don't have much of a frame of reference with college basketball, but like for me, like it just looks like the Big Ten this year is just really talented for the most part. Like there's a lot of really good teams, and then even the ones that are on the bottom, so to speak, are still good. They're not great, but they're just good. And I mean, granted, like we've talked about, it's if they're on the road, it seems like it's impossible for the team that's on the road to win, which again I think speaks more to how good the Big Ten itself is rather than you know the teams themselves. But I don't know. I think realistically, I think Fred has earned himself multiple, or at least more years. Again, I have no idea what the contract even looks like at this point. So he might still have 2 or 3 years on it. But
yes, I'm looking at it right now. Yeah, he's under contract through the 2026-2027 season. Okay. Kind of about the same time that Frost did his whole buyout thing, reduced contract thing. Fred also did take a little bit of a pay cut. At least through 2024, and then his contract will go back up to what it was before. But his buyout was reduced from 18.5 to 11 million, in case that ever does come up, which I think that was obviously before this season and the start of that, in case the season didn't go well. But he's at least got, 2 or 3 more seasons under contract. But, you know, obviously depending on how this goes and if they make the tournament, you know, Trev might, you know, reinstate some of that salary again, might give him a bonus and all of that. But
honestly, though, in this case, the fact that it's going to sound weird, but like he's got himself a really good building block this year to be like, look, like it took a while to get there, But like, I have a system that works. Or sorry, he can go in and say, I have a system that works.
Right.
And I can build upon this, because if he gets them to the point where they're getting to the tournament, he can get recruits and be like, hey, you can be the one that can change recruits, people, transfers, whatever. He can get people that say, hey, all we need is, what you can provide to this team to get us to that next level.
Right.
Whatever that means. I mean, however, depending on how far we go. But
Mm-hmm.
it's crazy to think that we saw two completely different trajectories. We were all hyped when Frost got hired, and then when Fred came back, we were all still hyped again. And it just kind of went two different directions.
Two different ways.
It worked out.
Yep.
But I think Fred was given, I shouldn't say a longer leash, because Frost was given a heck of a long leash in the football realm. But I think Fred was given a heck of a lot more, just because, outside of the 1 year that Tim Miles didn't do bad here. But, outside of that one really, really good year that he had, most people kind of wrote Nebraska off as a basketball school. And I'm not going to say we're going to change that in the next couple of years, but, we at least look like
respectable.
We're at least a competent basketball team now, where before it was like we were the the ones that would be the easy win for the most part. So
it's been fun to watch, because I know, like, when Fred was first hired, it was kind of like, we're gonna try and get some transfers in. Like, obviously he's gonna recruit his guys, but we're gonna lean heavily on just bringing some veteran guys in, trying to build something, get some momentum going. And now there is a legitimate framework, and there's an actual team around. It's not just, like I said, there's not just the one or two guys that are leading it. There's depth to the team. There's things that are obviously working. He's got a plan implemented, and it's just been really cool to see it actually evolve in a positive way for Nebraska now. Whether we reap the rewards, actually, and still to be seen. Obviously, a lot of season to go, but the trajectory is good.
I think if they they like 12 or 13 more games left, I think if they can get to 20 wins by conference tournament time, it's going to be really good setup for their odds. That's obviously taking into account that they lose in 5, they go whatever 6-6, 7-5 in that stretch, or whatever, however many games are left. But I think if you at least eclipse the 20 win mark by the time you get to the conference tournament startup, that certainly puts you in position to skip the first round of the Big Ten tournament, which Nebraska has not done recently. Again, one less game you have to play, and then you go from there. But somehow if they finish in the top 4 where they get 2 buys, that'd be great. But I think right now, you start small. You just hope for that first round bye in the conference tournament, just so you don't have to play, so many games right away. But yeah, like Nate said, they're projected a 9 seed. Just some, like, Ken Palm and the net rankings and all of that kind of have them about a 65 to 70% lock right now for the tournament. Assuming they keep on the trajectory path of that kind of 20-ish win season right now. And then, you go from there. But it's been a fun, exciting season. Definitely more in tune than I have been in the past, and not as groin kicked. And I think entry news wise, I mean, Juwan Gary was warming up before the Ohio State game, but Fred still said, no, we're going to sit him for another game just to be sure. But it's the fact that he's putting weight back on that leg again. He's doing warm ups. He's doing full range stuff is a really good sign for Nebraska that we'll have him back in the next game or so for sure. And definitely will help. Josiah Alec, like Nate said, has been a huge help off the bench and starting on Jawan's place and just being a physical bruiser. He's not much of a scorer, but man, he loves just going up for rebounds and just fighting guys in the post and everything. So, even though Jawan comes back, I think you can feel really confident that you can still start Josiah or bring him off the bench and for Rank Mask or Juwan Gary, and be really confident that he's going to give you what he needs going forward. But yeah, I think with that, like I said, we'll hit on our little MLB news, and really the only thing noteworthy that has happened is the Hall of Fame ballots came out of the 3 that are going to be elected to the Hall of Fame this year. And definitely, if you knew about baseball way back in the day, these names might sound familiar to you. Dave, definitely, due to me because I watched all of them growing up. Most notably, I think Joe Mauer, for sure, the Twins catcher. Probably outside of him and Jorge Posada and Pudge Rodriguez and all of them. I think those are just, he's a very household catcher name, at least in my lifetime of just growing up with baseball and everything. So very deserved for him. And then Todd Helton of the Rockies, and then Adrian Beltre, who kind of jumped around from team to team, but I kind of remember him more with the Mets than anybody else, for sure. But yeah, I mean, I think don't really have any qualms about those guys getting elected in. I always laugh at the fact with the MLB Hall of Fame every year. It's like, is Pete Rose is ever going to get inducted? Barry Bonds, Roger Clemens, the guys that were really good at what they did, but kind of cheated their way to getting there. But yeah, I don't really want my baseball news with that. I don't know if you guys have any more takes about that.
Go
at all.
Stickball.
Go Stickball is right.
Yeah, I don't. Joe Mauer is just a cool story. He's from St. Paul, I believe, and from Minnesota. When they're going to the Hall of Fame, being with kind of his home state team is a pretty cool story. And so,
right,
yeah.
All right, with that, kind of wrap up our points here. I know we want to give our NFL predictions for these weekend's games. I know Nate kind of already gave a Super Bowl prediction, which kind of tells you what his picks were going to be. Obviously, I'm cheering for the Ravens full-heartedly against the Chiefs. I don't think there was any question about that. But I mean, my picks are going to be the same as Nate. I think a Ravens-Lions Super Bowl would be a really fun matchup. Just because I don't want to see San Francisco again there or the Chiefs there again. So definitely going just for the oddballs, but both teams are very capable of doing that at the same time. And if that is the Super Bowl matchup, I think it'll definitely be one of the more watched ones in recent history for sure. But yeah, Zach, I don't know if you have any different predictions or it's pretty much going to be the exact same as that.
Predictions, no. But I mean, I will have my eyes glued on that Detroit-San Francisco game just because at this point, if I had to pick one team that I really want to at least see go to the Super Bowl, it's got to be Detroit. Only because the story is really good. I mean, it's been so long since Detroit has had, in terms of football, I should say, but it's been a really, really long time since they've had any kind of good success. So it's just it's a great Cinderella story in that regard. That, and then I would assume that if they end up, winning the Super Bowl, that Eminem would come out with another album, and it might actually be pretty good. So, I thought his last couple were fine, but a Super Bowl winning Eminem album after that,
great. Get Dan Campbell on a track.
Fire.
Oh,
feature Tim Robinson on a track too.
Feature Tim Robinson. Oh man, he could do so much with Detroit people.
Yeah. But I'm in the same boat. I don't have a problem with Kansas City, but Baltimore to me in terms of fandom, Baltimore's whatever. So I hope they do it. And quite frankly, I think if Detroit does end up winning, I think Baltimore ends up beating Kansas City. So yeah, I think it's going to be Baltimore and Detroit. That's my prediction there. Okay. So looks like we're all on the same page.
Yeah. And then just those games are Sunday, 2:00, I believe, is the AFC Championship game, and then probably 30 minutes after that game ends at 5:30 will be the Lions and 49ers. So a couple good games there. Nebraska plays 11 a.m. on BTN, I believe, this Saturday against Maryland. If you want to tune into some Nebraska ball, and hopefully they'll get that road win that we all desperately want and need.
Nebraska women's basketball plays Iowa on Saturday, I believe, at noon.
Yes.
Well,
right before the football game. So if you want to watch Caitlin Clark go off, certainly tune into that because she probably
or
does.
If Nebraska wins, and if Nebraska fans end up charging the court, just watch out for Caitlin Clark. She's gonna armbar you. Watch out.
Flopper, no flopper. Who's really to say what she actually did? She's just really preparing for the WNBA. She's getting a really good head start on it. Just learning from the old goat himself, of LeBron, the master of flopping. So, yeah. So we have no other news. Thanks y'all for tuning in. And again, if you have any sort of interesting ideas, stories, news that you come across that are quirky and weird, want us to discuss, or any quirky sports videos that you want us to discuss and review, we certainly will do all of that. And yeah, hopefully our sports teams do what they need to do this weekend in our rooting interest, for sure. And I'd like to thank you all for tuning in again, and we'll talk to you all next week.